Hey, you true believers, Chris Mack coming at you today, jumping back into the Image Comics universe. Today we're going over the Playmates Gen.3's WildC.A.T.s Void and Voodoo. We've already gone over Spartan, Zealot, Grifter, and his bike, and I figured it was high time that we went over two of the most underrated, interesting characters of the team. So we'll start with Void. We're going to move Voodoo here off to the side, and on both of these figures, I just love how, for the box, they use Gen.3's art, which is absolutely spectacular, but I like how it just kind of comes up out of the packaging. It's just a nice little addition to make the whole product pop. Say that 3 times fast. And as you can see, gorgeous artwork, a slew of awesome accessories that we will get into here in a second. Come around to the side. I'm glad that they give you a list of the gear in case you ever lose it, so you'll know what you need. Come around to the back, and you get the characters that you can buy, so I'll make sure you get a close-up of that, as well as the awesome ID card. I miss when figures came with those. Come back around, just the blister pack on top. Bottom, nothing there, so let's slide Void over yonder. Pull out Voodoo, and let me drop her. And again, awesome accessories that I can't wait to dive into, the list that you need. Come around back to the back, figures from the wave, as well as the ID card, so I'll make sure to get close-ups of those for you guys. Nothing on the sides because it's a blister pack, which is kind of, in my opinion. But nonetheless, even though these characters in the books and the cartoon were awesome, are these action figures equally fancy? Let's go ahead and get them out and get a closer look at them. Now here's Void and Voodoo out of their packaging, and for the figures at the time, these are absolutely beautiful sculpts, and this accessory that we'll talk about in a minute, I'm already in love with it for the ideas that they were trying to come out with back in 1993, 94, or whatever. Yes, of course, figures like this are going to have their articulation problems, but as we go through this review, let's look at it through the lens of the 90s and what type of technology they had available at the time. So let's get these two awesome looking figures off the spinner and get a closer look at them. Priscilla Katine, who is Voodoo, and Adriana Tereshkova, I believe is how you pronounce her last name, who is Void, were created by Jim Lee and Brandon Choi. Their first appearance was in WildC.A.T.s #1 from August of 1992 from Image Comics. Voodoo is of human Kherubim and Daemonite ancestry with an ability called the Sight. This gift allows her to see Daemonites who possess other beings and remove them from their hosts. She originally was an exotic dancer at the hot spot in Georgetown, Washington, before she was rescued from the Daemonites who were trying to abduct her. And I can kind of see why they used Warblade as the introductory character in the 94 cartoon. And Ruth Marshall supplied the voice of Voodoo on the show. Void was the evolution of a woman named Adriana, who was a Russian cosmonaut. She died when their space station landed on Earth, though she survived by bonding with an orb of power. She has the ability to see the future, as well as teleport herself and team members to anywhere on Earth. Online, her official death was WildC.A.T.s #13 from September of 94. But here, later issues, they did feature Void. So I'm assuming it means that this was the death of Adriana and Void remains. Because I know later on, Spartan takes over the Void power. So for you WildC.A.T. buffs, if you could, clear that up for me in the comments, I'd be super grateful. And I'm also not a big fan of how she was portrayed in the later runs of the WildC.A.T. comics. What are your thoughts? And also, I thought it was interesting in the animated series, they made her a living computer. And she was voiced by Janet Leanne Green on the animated series. So with the backstory out of the way, let's jump into the accessories that these figures come with. And I gotta say, one thing I forget about these earlier figures, man, we were spoiled with accessories galore. Like, the figures in and of themselves weren't that much. As you can see, the posing was not there, but I mean, we always got cool stands. The purple one is Void, the red one's is Voodoo's. But just, I mean, that's so flipping cool. Now, this one, there's something special about this one, and we'll talk about that in a second. Let's finish up with, what's her name? Voodoo. So she comes with this really cool battle blade. And I mean, look at the golds in that thing and the silvers. Yeah, of course, you know, this was designed for a younger audience, so of course, everything is dulled. But it's a nice spear. And what I think they were going for, and they didn't really touch on in the comic or in the cartoon, is in the cartoon they did talk about how Zealot was always hounding Void because she was in the way, because she didn't know, or not Void, Voodoo, because she didn't know how to fight. But eventually they come to an understanding on the team. But I think what that was inspired from that was the, in the comics, I think it was issue, well, I'm not even going to assume, but what happens is at one point, Zealot finally offers to take Voodoo under her wing and train her as a Coda warrior. And so I think that's kind of what they were going for here, where they would give her this really cool gold shield with the purple spikes and the nice line work. And it fits somewhat okay in her hand. So let's take the loose hand. But see, what kind of drives me nuts though is the lack of, what do you call it? The lack of articulation. You can't really get a nice, it looks a little clumsy in her hands, but nonetheless, just to have those, badass. The other things that she comes with are these, assuming this figure is going to stay, are these knee pads, which I'm surprised because a lot of figures, even some of the newer like Marvel Legends, how these buckles just always never seem to stay. But check this out. I was really surprised when I was monkeying with this one. So you put that in there, and they made the buckle. Yeah, let me try to do this on camera. That's funny. We'll try anyway. Look at that. Just pops seamlessly into place instead of like some of these other figures, or like the old Ninja Turtle belts where you just sometimes have to futz with that thing forever to get that on. Now that pops on and off relatively well, so I'm like, oh, thank God. So you just take that and boop. See, they have all those battle pieces for Voodoo. Just a very, very nice addition. Now for Void, she doesn't come with a lot. But if you watch the cartoon or you've read the comics, you know a lot of her power effects are purple. And so this thing here, I mean, it looks kind of silly, but it makes sense for what it's supposed to be. And I love that it's like an early sense of a flight stand. And that's what I meant here where, see how the, sorry guys, I'm still kicking this cold. That hole right there, you have to be a little gentle, but if you get it in there, you hear that pop. And look at that. Look how awesome that is for an early 90s flight stand. That, in and of itself, that's cool. I just wish that the articulation was there where you could put her arms out to her side and stuff and have her look up. Because that's a lot of the poses that we always see with Void and a lot of the promos and whatever else. But nonetheless, that is badass. Now that's all the accessories, excuse me, that they come with. Now for the paint apps, the one thing about Void that I'm really disappointed in is the fact that both in the cartoon and the comics, she never had pupils. Like her eyes were always whited out. And so the fact that they gave her blue eyes and pupils, I don't know if that was just to make her look more human for like, you know, sell value on a shelf. But nonetheless, it just, for me, knowing who Void is, that kind of takes it away. But at least the skin tone looks good. And this silver that they used, I mean, look at the way that this interacts with the light. Just going through and photographing her and seeing the way everything just refracts off this silver body just looks great. It irks my Gurk that they, of course, they put the legal stuff right there. I wish that they would have stamped it on the foot, but again, early 90s figure. Not much else to Void, but that silver with the way that they put her face on there just looks good. I just wish that the eyes would have been whited out. Now, as for Voodoo, I can understand why, because these are more based on the animated series than the comics, why they gave her more of a bodysuit. Because if you go back and read the first couple of issues, her outfit choices were just kind of like, oh, man. But the black hair, the way it waves back here, looks great. The face is not too bad. You can see the red lipstick here. She's got the blue eyes. And it looks like Pris. Just really good work there. Purple of her helmet there. Awesome Wildcat logo there on the chest. Yellows look good. Armband looks good. And then she has like this fancy little skull on her belt. Neat stuff there. Purples and yellows look good. Of course, had to stamp it on stupid legal stuff on her leg. But again, it is what it is. Now, as for Pris's articulation, head can only go side to side, and I'm glad that they really thought this out back in the days to make sure that the hair cleared at least both of her shoulders. Arms can only go 360, no hand or bicep swivel. Legs can only go out that far, and of course there's no thigh swivel, which that's what I mean, where the limitations of the old figures. I hate that we were so limited now and we're so spoiled in this modern generation, and I'm glad that we've kind of come a long way. I just wish that McFarlane would talk with Jim Lee now that he has the DC's license and just be like, let's make a retro wave of the Wildcats. Fans are howling for it, so what are we waiting on? And as you can see, Void here has just about the exact same articulation as Pris. Nothing much. And of course the flat feet, which at least back in the day, sometimes like with the way Pris's foot is or the way Void's kind of goes up like that, it's sometimes frustrating to try to get them to balance. But nonetheless, they look good for what year they were, and I like the chances that they took with all the accessories, and especially the flight stand for Void. Just good stuff all around, and I'm happy to have these in my collection. Now here's Void and Voodoo next to the three figures that we've already gone over. Here's Zealot, Grifter, and Spartan. And as you can see, slowly but surely, the team is coming together. And even though, like I said, these are based off the cartoon, they still look relatively comic accurate. And as I said, if you look through the lens of 90s stuff, they look absolutely spectacular. Yes, I prefer the modern Grifter that we just got, and we've gone over, so I'll leave a card somewhere on this review so you guys can check it out. But still, some of the chances they took on these figures, like swappable hands, clear transparentness, the flight stand, just cool stuff that we see that has evolved into what we got now. And that's why I can absolutely appreciate these figures and just how beautiful they are. I mean, some of them, like Spartan here, is the crotch paint is chipping, and it kills me. And that Grifter kind of has that caveman ooga booga type stance going on. I'll let that go, because these, there they all go, still look absolutely gorgeous. And the attention to detail to at least make them look like the characters they're supposed to be, I'm just one happy little camper. Do you guys still have your Wildcat figures, and do you pose them? We'd love to see it on our social media pages, and just let us know what you think of these old school designs down in the comments. Now, as I said at the beginning of the review, looking at this through the lens of 90s action figures, oh my God, I'm still blown away, almost a decade later, minus the frustrating articulation. These figures hold up in terms of how beautifully well done they are, at least in my opinion. And the fact that they made some sort of flight stand for Void, you just get all the brownie points in the world. And also with Voodoo being trained as a coda, being able to snap those knee pads on, oh, that was like silk compared to, I don't know if y'all remember, like Shredder's belts from the original Turtles line or the Turtles belts. Oh, anytime those would pop off, I would just absolutely scream. And also the fact that those snap on easier than, let's say, the Marvel Legends Cyclops with his belt and stuff like that. Yeah, baby. I'm very happy. Of course, now let's get back to reality. Articulation sucks. This could have been sharper, but again, these were more towards youngins back in the day, as where adult collectors have kind of taken over that market. So I'm happy. I'm thankful that I have these. Loved the comic books. I enjoyed the animated series for what it was, and the action figures here are just beautiful. I just wish Todd and Jim, since Todd has the freaking DC license and he's given us a grifter, I would love to see a line of old school Wildcats with either a Maul Build-A-Figure or Deluxe, and a Hellspawn either Deluxe or Build-A-Figure. I just think that would be the bee's knees, and a lot of collectors I've seen of howling for that. So with that said, guys, if you've enjoyed these old school figures, you're gonna have to do the secondary market or anywhere online because they are getting harder to find. And if you've enjoyed this review, we really would appreciate if you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you don't mind hitting that fancy little Wildcats roar bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. Come to the channel, and we love talking with you and hearing your thoughts and feedback down in the comments below or social media pages, which I'll make sure to leave the links down in the description. So with all that said, thank you so much for stopping by. Photo slideshow coming up next, and I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.
Yeah.